My name is Nicholas Viselli, and I am the artistic director of Theater Breaking Through Barriers here in New York City. Now, let me try to remember how I say this now. Um, I, I, I like to refer to our company as one of New York's best kept secrets. Really, I know there are many, but we are certainly one of them. Um, Theater Breaking Through Barriers is the only off-Broadway theater company in New York dedicated to advancing and celebrating the work of professional artists, writers, directors, designers, technicians, administrators with disabilities. The company was founded by a man named Ike Shamblin in 1979. At that time, we were Theater by the Blind. Many people might remember Theater by the Blind or Blind Theater or whatever, but we were always TBTB. And I think it's really extraordinary because the company was founded at a time when the perception that art by anyone with a disability was anything but professional. It was generally mostly considered therapy theater at best. And that, unfortunately, that sort of stigmatization of disability remains in our society today. It's the idea that disability consider all diversity as professional. Yeah, it depends on any other type of disability, quite frankly. But when it comes to disability, it's hard to sort of for mainstream audiences to sort of say disability and professional. They sort of say it doesn't work. It's hard to sort of see that. I know that sounds strange, but it's just true.
Even when you have companies like Deaf West?
Well, sure, but Deaf West, it's a little bit of a different thing because Deaf West started a little bit later than us, and they, if they didn't do shows like that actually went to Broadway, they would just still be considered a disabled theater company. There's a difference, I think, between disabled theater and theater by artists with disabilities. Now, you may think it's a subtle difference, but it's not. Because one puts the disability first, the other puts the art first. You see, that's the difference. And while there are actually a lot of really wonderful theater companies in New York that work with disabled artists and do disabled theater, there is a very nuanced difference, and we can talk about that a little bit more in the later on. But let me just go through the rest of our company. In 2004 is when we officially we started performing on an off-Broadway contract. So we officially became an off-Broadway theater in 2004. And in 2008, we chose to expand our mission to include artists with all abilities and disabilities. The company was always integrated. It was never a situation where we felt we only work with blind and low vision artists. I had started working with the company actually, and I am not blind or low vision. I started working with the company in 1997, and I just love the work. I love the quality of the work and the artists. Just amazing.
What is your disability?
I am not disabled. When Ike founded the company in 1979, it was integration was very, very important for him. Why? Because he didn't want the organization. He wanted the organization to focus on the quality of the work and the theater, the art, not the disability. That's important, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But by incorporating disabled and non-disabled artists together, now we are creating a level playing field. We're now not just talking about the disability, we're showing the talent of the artists that are on stage. And that's sort of integral. But even though we were always an integrated company, and we always were open to working with artists of all abilities and disabilities, with a name like Theater by the Blind, it very much limited us in terms of how people perceived us. So we officially expanded the mission in 2008 and changed the name from Theater by the Blind to Theater Breaking Through Barriers, maintaining the TBTB acronym, because that's generally how most people refer to us, because Theater by the Blind or Theater Breaking Through Barriers is a mouthful. So TBTB is easier.
True.
And it became a game changer for us as a company because now suddenly performers who never would have thought to work with us or apply to audition for us suddenly started coming in, and it just elevated the work. It just opened the door to a whole slew of artists and new talent that we didn't really know of before. So it's been really very, very exciting for us as a company, and we've really been experiencing a great deal of growth. That said, we still are a small company. We still only at this stage of the game are able to do 1 or 2 full productions a year. We do a lot of other work. We do a lot of touring. We attend a lot of festivals. We've done a lot of work with the United Nations. But as far as work in New York, it's very expensive to produce in New York. So if we can only at one point really perform 1 or 2 productions a year, or it's been an extraordinary year for us as a company. It's been obviously a very hard year, but I think, I think, and I don't want to be cute with this answer, but I want to sort of make it clear. Disabled artists are probably disabled people are the most adaptable people I know. They have
had
to
to adapt all their life.
Yeah. Whether you become disabled or you have a disability all your life, you have to adapt to a non-disabled society, and oftentimes figure out ways to get around and to survive. It's the simplest things that we take for granted oftentimes become more of a challenge. My wife, who is an artist with the company, has multiple sclerosis. She is a wheelchair user. So when we have to travel, we have to plan everything out. I am talking all disabilities, all disabilities. So while again, there are some disabilities that we work with more than others, that's not for lack of wanting to work with other artists. I mean, we do have artists in our company who have Asperger's syndrome, who are on the autism spectrum. We have artists who have Down syndrome. We have artists who, name it. I mean, everything from congenital amputees to people who are blind, people who are deaf, hard of hearing, people with physical limitations, physical disabilities. We like to do everything. We do everything from Shakespeare to with our original work that is written specifically for us. Now, it's very important here, and this is the other thought. We are not a disabled theater company. We're a company of artists who are performers with disabilities. And to give an artist an opportunity to play a role that in a mainstream, normal, quote unquote situation, they would not get a chance to play. For example, Hamlet. We did a production of Hamlet, and our Hamlet was blind. And you say, how can you cast a blind Hamlet?
My question would be, how can you not if they're talented?
Well, that's the key, isn't it? I mean, it really is about the artist, and to not give an artist an opportunity because you have a perception, you see something, and you say, no, I can't use you because of you're missing a limb or you're using a wheelchair. You're totally discounting and neglecting the artist. You're only looking at one thing. Our worlds on stage can be whatever we want them to be. I can have a man in a wheelchair who is a construction worker on a high-rise building. I can have a blind man as a brain surgeon. It is absolutely, in our world, anything is possible. There are people in our company that are as young as 16, 17, and we have our artists that are in their 80s. And again, we're an integrated company. So there are people in our company who are disabled, and there are people in the company who are not disabled. It's about the art. It's about the work.
And it should be, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think by casting a blind Hamlet or a construction worker in a wheelchair, you're bringing another dimension to that character. Because who's to say that Hamlet is not blind in more ways than one?
Mm-hmm. I've attended a lot of panels and a lot of roundtable discussions, and participated in a lot of events that dealt with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And yet, when everyone talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it was always race, gender, and sexual orientation.
Yeah, bullshit.
And disability always gets a back seat. And the fact of the matter is, disability is the only diversity that cuts across every other diversity. Disability knows no age, no race, no gender, no religion, no sexual orientation. It is present in every corner of our society. In our country, 1 in 4, that's 25% of our country's population, are living with a disability. It is the only diversity that anyone can fall into at any given moment. And if we were to put all of the disabled people together in the world together, it would become the world's third largest country.
And where do you perform? In other words, where's the physical theater? Is there a
Well,
physical theater?
We actually don't own our space, but we perform on Theater Row. That's pretty much our home. So we usually perform on 42nd Street, usually in one of the 99-seat theaters, the Clurman it was the Clurman and the Beckett. Now it's theaters 4 and 5, I think. We also perform at the new Art New York theaters on 53rd Street. This
Lovely.
last year, all of our performing has been done online.
But one of the best plays I would say I saw in the past 3 years had a girl with, I think she had Down syndrome, and she was playing the lead on off Broadway, and she was brilliant. She was one of the best things I've ever seen, because she was real and she was honest, and how she remembered those lines, which she had a ton of, was like amazing.
Just like any other off-Broadway company, whenever we're doing a production, we will always do EPA auditions, equity eligible performer auditions. So we always hold auditions at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. We also do a lot of individual or private auditions. I like to schedule private auditions for artists who are not in the union, because there are many artists who are very talented who haven't been given the opportunity. There's a lot of disabled artists who became equity members through our company. To just give artists an opportunity to thrive. You know, the one thing I want to mention here too is, in all of the discussions that I've had about diversity over the years, we're always forced to focus on what makes that diversity important and why we must be respectful of that diversity. But we never talk about a fundamental truth, which is, how are we all the same? We are all, if we cannot acknowledge that fundamental fact, then the diversities and the differences among each and every one of us they don't matter. If I can't see myself reflected in the person that's standing opposite me, then you're just another stranger to me. You're just another, and then I'm only going to see you for the differences rather than to see that you and I are the same. And the differences then become exciting. So when you're dealing with race and gender, those are physical perceptions. People look at you, they form an opinion of you based on the color of your skin, your gender, how you dress. And the same with people with disabilities. You have a physical disability, you're in a wheelchair, you walk with a cane, you're missing a limb, whatever the case. People form opinions of you based on that. We as a people, in this time of isolation during this pandemic, we had to have learned that we need each other now more than ever. And we have to slow down, and we have to look deeper. We have to look deeper at each other and recognize what that individual that is standing opposite you has to offer, which is vast. You know, ours is a great profession because every artist brings their own unique life experience to whatever work they're doing, which means that it cannot be duplicated. It can be imitated, but it cannot be duplicated. And that's why our work is so important as performers. I started acting really since I was in high school. That's when I really started doing any serious acting. Well, community theater and that. And I just love performing. I love, I love performing. I love directing. It's just so important to me. I think theater is oftentimes, when a lot of people consider it frivolous, it's not necessary. Oftentimes I want to be an actor. Oh, really? Okay. Well, what are you going to do to fall back on? Because you're not gonna have a serious career if you want to be an actor. The fact of the matter is, and I learn it now more and more than ever before, how important our art is, our work is, especially now, because it is theater holds a mirror up to society. Theater allows us to express what it is to be a human being on this planet. During the darkest of times, that's generally when the best art is created, because it allows artists to truly and passionately express what's happening in the world. And so I love theater, and I came to New York, and was working, wherever I could get jobs, auditioning all the time. And I'd known of this company because I had worked with an actor named George Ashiotis, who at one point was a co-artistic director of Theater by the Blind. We were doing a production of, believe it or not, a production of Julius Caesar, directed by Richard Harris. That's a whole other interview.
Oh, I want that
Um,
interview.
and oh, absolutely. And George, who actually came in from New York to be a part of this production, that's how we met. And he had said, "Oh yeah, I'm in a couple months. I'm doing this production in New York I work with this company, TBTV, and we're doing an Agatha Christie play, The Unexpected Guest." And so I went out to see it, and I was blown away, because it's a cast of 9 artists, and 6 of the 9 artists on stage were blind,
Wow.
and they were playing sighted. Actors win awards for playing disabled, but when are you going to see a disabled actor winning award for playing non-disabled? Because that, I can guarantee you, is far more challenging. And yet it was amazing. And that's when I first saw the work of this company. I didn't work with them until a few years later, because the artistic director, Ike Shamblin, used to like to hire sighted actors, specifically when they were trying to choose their next season, because his thought process was, rather than trying to get a script printed in Braille and large print and and have an audio recording of it, it would just be easier to gather the company, have a group of sighted actors read it for the company, and then based on everyone's reactions, we choose the season that way. And so that's how I started working with the company. And then I was asked to do more and more work, and I didn't want to leave, because what I loved about it was there was a great sense of community and a common interest, a common passion for the work. We all loved the work, and there were just such committed, passionate artists, and I just loved working with them. And now I run the company.
What is your dream production?
Oh my goodness. That's a hard one, because there are so many great productions that I want to. I mean, we've done, yeah, we've done so many. I really would love to be able to do. There are a few big musicals I would love to do. I know that a lot of our artists would love us to do them as well. Musicals tend to be a lot more expensive, which is why we aren't doing them as much. We are planning a musical review. We're doing a review right now coming up, called Brecht on Brecht, which I love, which does have a lot of Brecht's music, Brecht and Kurt Weill, and so there will be music in that, but it is not a musical.
What musical?
Oh my God. I would love one of my favorites is Man of La Mancha. I would love to do Man of La Mancha. And I think it would lend itself so beautifully, because in Man of La Mancha, you have the main character who is, he develops dementia. He now thinks he's someone he's not. So it is really a disability.
Or is he somebody who he should have been?
Well, for sure, but it's that the idea of someone who has his mind has now taken him to a different place, which is something that is traditionally associated with many people with disabilities. You look at someone who's on the autism spectrum, and you say they don't they have problems, but it's like, really? Do they? They see the world differently. They just see the world differently. The thing with our productions, and the reason why we don't do a lot of plays that deal directly with disability, we've done them and we do them. I think they're important, and they're integral and they're educational. But I think it's more important to do a play that has nothing to do with disability, and to have our artists performing that play. What I learn is, first of all, any issues that, if I think whenever you go into a rehearsal room, everybody brings their limitations. They bring their talents and they bring their limitations. And in the rehearsal room is where it all gets worked out. That's where everyone works together. That's where the collaboration happens. When you get to the stage, the audience, they become part of a more finished product. I won't say ever finished, because theater is never finished. It's always evolving. But it's a lot more like, so a lot of the issues, the challenges, the problems get worked out in the rehearsal room. And if we do our jobs right, yeah, if we do our jobs right as artists, you might see a person with a disability come out on stage, and you will see that and you will acknowledge it. But if we're doing our jobs right, you become so absorbed in the story that the disability disappears. It doesn't matter. It is a magic act. We did a production once in 2015 that cast a large cast of people. It was a revival of The Unexpected Guest. 9 actors, 7 of the 9 actors were performers with disabilities, many of them visible disabilities. And people were coming out saying, this is a company that works with disability, but where was the disability? I didn't see any disability on stage. It's like, right. Right, exactly. You didn't. Hopefully you saw a show that you enjoyed. I mean, if you feel cheated because you didn't see someone with a disability, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but you did. you just weren't paying attention to it because you were distracted by the play, which is why you were there in the first place. I'm really now focused on doing a lot of work where I am focused on bringing together artists from all different corners of our society. During we did, this year was an interesting year for us. Just talk a little about this. Obviously, we had 3 major plans set for the last season. We were doing a staged reading of a new musical. We were doing Brecht on Brecht, and then we were doing a program that we have called our Playmakers Intensive. And then we have a second part of that, which is our Playmakers Redux. The intensive is an exciting thing. It started as sort of a 24-hour play festival thing, and it evolved into something a little bit greater, where we gather together a group of artists, usually 5 or 6 writers, 5 or 6 directors, and as many actors as we can get, and randomly pair everybody into groups. The writer will choose the name of the director out of a hat. The director will choose 2 or 3 actors.
Oh, like 24-hour plays.
Yes. And well, it started as a 24-hour thing, but what we learned with that was, well, that really is more of an exercise for the writers and not so much for the rest of the company.
Right.
So we, when we do it live, we make it 1 week. So we say you have a week, and we will, the company will pay for each group to have at least 1 2-hour rehearsal in that week. And then the following week we will gather, we will do a final dress, and then we will invite an audience to come for free and see all of the work that you created. And that's when things snapped into place, because the work that came out of that was really exciting. And that's when it really became collaborative, because writers were writing for actors, which is the point. The reason why we started this in the first place was we need to have more writers writing for disabled artists.
We need to have writers writing, period.
Yes. Well, that's it. So, and writing for a disabled artist, but not specifically writing about the disability. I mean, per se, you can, but it's not so much. It's not so much the focus. It's more about the artist, because when we talk about a disability, we're talking about one element of that person, one
Right.
characteristic. It would be like saying you only get cast because you have red hair, and that's it. All I see on you is red hair. I don't know. I don't. You can sing. I don't care. You got red hair. That's all that matters to me. And so, if that's all you're going to look at, you are missing so much more.
Right.
And so the writers get to meet the actors and talk with them, and the actors share stories, and then suddenly these stories that they share with the writers start working their way into the story and getting woven into this. So it really is a collaboration on all sides. It's wonderful. Um, so then we do our Playmakers Redux, and because what was happening is we were doing the intensive for like 7 or 8 years, and we were gathering these really great plays, some of which were really good. They just needed a little more work, and it's like, well, we need to do something with them. So I said, well, the ones that need a little more work, why don't we have what we'll call a redux? We'll give the writers a little more time. They can work with the same actors, or if they want to rewrite the plays, they can rewrite them and choose different actors. But then the goal is to get a finished work that can then go to a full production. So it becomes step one is the writing of it, step two is the refinement, and then we can use it for a full production. When the pandemic hit, we were, of course, stuck. What are we going to do? You know, I wasn't interested. I didn't even know about doing theater online. I was like, it's not really theater, is it? You know, it's
No,
not.
no, may I
Right?
state?
Yeah. Well, but the thing was, when the absence of alternatives clears the mind marvelously. So when you don't have a choice, I started doing this series called TV Stories from Home, and I asked our artists to create 3 or 4 minute videos talking about their favorite moments in theater, whether that was them performing or them as an audience member, just to share a little bit of, and also to give a little profile on each of the artists.
Which is great.
But then I said, you know what? Why don't we try doing an online intensive? I had no idea it was going to work. I didn't think it would, quite honestly. I said, this is not going to work. But I was so pleasantly wrong about that. We did our first intensive, and everything was created online, rehearsed online, and the actors that were in plays, when they came to rehearsals on Zoom here, they came and brought the same level of excitement and enthusiasm that they would have brought if they were all gathered in a room together. And the work that came out of it was extraordinary. So and then we performed them live. We did 2 live, rather than performing all, we do short plays. So the plays were 10-15 minute plays, perfect for online, because if you're going to sit and watch a show and you have to sit on your computer for 2 hours, that's a haul. But if you're talking 10-15 minutes, you can hold your attention. We can hold your attention that long. The thing about the intensives was, rather than performing all of the shows at once, we would premiere 1 short play every evening over the course of a week. And so every night at 7:30, we did a live stream on YouTube. We had live captioning for that. So for people who were deaf, hard of hearing, they'd be able to enjoy the show as well. And then we did a second live performance at 8:15 on Facebook. And it was great. It was really, really great. And the first intensive we did, it happened the week of George Floyd's murder. There was a lot of discussion about us making a statement. We all felt we had to make a statement. All these theater companies are coming out with statements, but they all sort of sounded the same. And I said to myself, I don't want to make a statement. I mean, we're a company that works with diversity, and we are feeling horrible about what had happened. But my thought was, what we need to do more is listen, and we need to practice. So I decided we were going to do a second intensive, And in the second intensive we did was in August. We called that one Voices from the Great Experiment. And I reached out to a lot of artists that I had never worked with before from all different communities. A lot of people were saying you should work with the African American community. I said, I don't want to just work with the African American community because it's not just an African American problem. And if we just single out that community, we're doing them a disservice. The goal is
become
everyone.
racist, and isn't that the point of what we're not supposed to be?
Yes, we have to all be the same. And so my thought became, as a company of disabled artists, where disability sits at the intersection of all other diversities, this puts us in a position of great, well, it gives us an opportunity to reach out. I think it's an obligation of all of us as artists, but as a company of disabled artists, where people often look at disability as less than, to put us in a position of power to say we are going to be the ones that reach out, and we are going to invite people to this common ground that we inhabit, and we are all going to create together as artists. That is really it's a bigger picture thing, but it's very important that that's what we do. So
now, please tell me that you saw what's going on with the government breakdown of what artists are getting, and you guys have started your grant.
Oh yes, we are.
Good boy. Because people don't know about this, and the companies that are going to get it are these big conglomerate companies like the public, when it's companies like yours that deserve it, but they don't know about this, which is why we're bringing it up in this Zoom.